I've always considered myself a rational person. I don't believe in ghosts, demons, or any of that supernatural nonsense. But recent events have shaken my beliefs to the core, and I don't know who else to turn to. Maybe writing it all down will help me make sense of it. Or maybe it's just a way to cope. Either way, I need to tell someone what happened, even if I'm the only one who ever reads this. It all started about a month ago when I moved into my grandmother's old house. She passed away last year, and since no one else in the family wanted the place, it fell to me. I wasn't thrilled about it, but the price was right, free, and I could use the extra space. So I packed up my things and moved in, hoping to start fresh after a tough few years. The house itself is old, built sometime in the early 1900s. It's got that classic creepy vibe. Creaky floors, drafty windows, and a basement that smells like damp earth no matter how much I try to air it out. But it was home, and I was determined to make the best of it. One afternoon, while I was trying to organize the attic, I came across an old wooden chest tucked away in a dusty corner. It was locked, but the wood was so old that it didn't take much effort to pry it open. Inside, I found a bunch of old knickknacks, family heirlooms, and at the very bottom, a small leather-bound journal. The cover was worn, and the pages were yellow with age, but it was still intact. Curious, I flipped through the journal. It belonged to my great-grandfather, a man I knew very little about. The entries were dated from the late 1920s, and most of them were mundane. Notes about the weather, crops, and daily chores. But as I read further, the tone of the journal began to change. The entries grew darker, more frantic, and they started to hint at something that had deeply troubled him. The first entry that caught my attention was dated November 3, 1928. I heard it again last night. The scratching at the window. It's been happening every night for a week now, always around midnight. I thought it was just the wind at first, but now I'm not so sure. I've started to keep a lantern by my bed. I don't know why, but it makes me feel safer. As I continued reading, the entries became more disturbing. My great-grandfather wrote about waking up to find muddy footprints on the floor near his bed, even though the windows and doors were always locked. He mentioned seeing shadowy figures in the corners of his vision, disappearing whenever he turned to look directly at them. And the scratching, it grew louder, more insistent, until he could no longer sleep. The last few entries in the journal were almost illegible, scrawled in a shaky hand. November 20, 1928. I can't take it anymore. The scratching is driving me mad. I haven't slept in days. I tried nailing the windows shut, but it didn't help. Last night, I saw it. A face, pale and twisted, staring at me through the glass. I know it sounds crazy, but it was there. I'm not sure how much longer I can hold out. November 23, 1928. I've decided to stay up tonight. I have my lantern, and I barricaded the door. Whatever it is, I won't let it in. I just need to get through this one night. If I can survive until morning, maybe it will leave me alone. That was the last entry. There was nothing else, no explanation, no conclusion. My great-grandfather's journal ended abruptly, leaving me with more questions than answers. What had he seen? What had driven him to such madness? I didn't know, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to the story. For the next few nights, I couldn't stop thinking about the journal. I'd lie in bed, listening to the creaks and groans of the old house, wondering if my great-grandfather's fears had any basis in reality. I tried to convince myself that it was just an old man's delusions, brought on by stress or illness. But the more I tried to ignore it, the more it gnawed at me. Then, about a week ago, something strange happened. I was in bed, just drifting off to sleep, when I heard a faint scratching sound coming from the window. My heart skipped a beat as I sat up, straining to hear. The sound was soft, almost imperceptible, but it was there, just like my great-grandfather had described. I tried to dismiss it as a branch scraping against the glass or an animal outside, but deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. The sound continued for several minutes before fading away, leaving me wide awake and terrified. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next day, I tried to rationalize what I had heard. Maybe it was just my mind playing tricks on me, influenced by the journal's creepy contents. But that night, the scratching returned, louder and more persistent. It started at midnight, just like my great-grandfather had written. I lay in bed, clutching the sheets, too afraid to move. When I finally gathered the courage to check the window, there was nothing there. No tree branches, no animals, nothing that could explain the noise. But the sound persisted, scratching at my nerves like a persistent itch. I tried everything to block it out, earplugs, music, even sleeping pills, but nothing worked. The scratching continued night after night, driving me to the brink of exhaustion. Then the shadows started appearing. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, tricks of the light or the result of my sleep-deprived mind. But the shadows were real. I catch glimpses of them out of the corner of my eye, dark, humanoid figures lurking just beyond my line of sight. Every time I turned to look, they would vanish, melting into the darkness as if they had never been there. I became paranoid, jumping at every creak and whisper the house made. I started sleeping with the light, just like my great-grandfather had done. But even that didn't help. The shadows grew bolder, creeping closer each night, until I could feel the cold presence in the room with me. I knew I was losing my grip on reality. The lack of sleep was taking its toll, making it harder to think, to function. I tried talking to friends about it, but they just brushed it off as stress or an overactive imagination. No one believed me, and I couldn't blame them. If I hadn't experienced it myself, I wouldn't believe it either. 3 days ago, I found muddy footprints in my bedroom. They led from the window to my bed, just like in my great-grandfather's journal. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Whatever had tormented him all those years ago was now targeting me. But why? What had I done to attract its attention? I didn't have any answers, only a growing sense of dread that this was just the beginning. 2 days ago, I decided to stay up all night, just like my great-grandfather had done. I barricaded the door, turned on every light in the house, and sat in bed with a flashlight, waiting. The scratching started right on schedule, followed by the shadows creeping along the walls. I was terrified, but I refused to give in. I kept telling myself that if I could just make it until morning, it would all go away. But something changed. The shadows didn't disappear this time. They lingered, growing more defiant. I could see their twisted forms, faces contorted in silent screams. They moved closer, surrounding me, their cold presence pressing in from all sides. That's when I saw it, the face from the journal. Pale, twisted, staring at me through the window. It wasn't human, not entirely. Its eyes were empty voids, blacker than the shadows themselves, and its mouth was a gaping maw, filled with darkness. It watched me, unblinking, as the shadows closed in. I don't remember much of what happened next. I must have passed out from fear or exhaustion, because when I woke up, it was morning, and the house was silent. The shadows were gone, and the scratching had stopped, but the terror remained, a knowing presence in the back of my mind. It spent the last few days trying to figure out what to do. I can't stay here, not after what I've seen. But I'm also afraid to leave. What if it follows me? What if it doesn't matter where I go, and this thing is now a part of my life? I don't know if I can escape it. I don't ever feel safe again. I've been staying up late, trying to avoid sleep. But I know I can't keep this up forever. The fatigue is overwhelming, and I can feel myself slipping. The shadows keep appearing, even during the day now. I'll catch a glimpse of one in the hallway or reflected in a mirror, only for it to vanish the moment I turn to look. The scratching, too, has returned, sometimes during the day, always faint but persistent, like a warning that whatever this is, it's not done with me yet. I tried getting rid of the journal, thinking maybe that was the key. I took it out to the backyard and burned it in a fire pit, watching as the flames consumed the pages. For a brief moment, I felt a sense of relief, like I had severed a connection to whatever dark force had been plaguing me. But that night, the scratching was louder than ever, and the shadows were waiting for me the moment I stepped into my bedroom. They surrounded me, their forms more solid, more real than they had ever been. I could feel them pressing against me, cold and heavy, suffocating. And then, through the window, I saw the face again. It was closer this time, pressed against the glass, its mouth stretching wider in a silent scream. I don't know what it wants from me. I don't know how to stop it. I haven't left the house in days. I boarded up the windows, but it doesn't matter. The scratching is inside now. The shadows are everywhere. I'm afraid to sleep, afraid to close my eyes because I know that when I do, it will be waiting for me. This might be the last time I write anything down. I don't think I have much time left. I can feel it getting closer, the cold seeping into my bones, the darkness pressing in from all sides. I can hear the scratching, louder than ever, echoing inside my head. The face is back, watching me from the corner of the room, even though there's no window there. I don't know how this ends, but I'm afraid. I'm so afraid. If you're reading this, if anyone is reading this, please, don't come looking for me. Don't come to this house. Burn it down, destroy everything inside, and never, ever look back. Because once you let it in, it never leaves. And it's always watching, always waiting. I think it's here now. I can feel it. The shadows are moving. The scratching is.